Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have the top 8 deck list for the PPG 3-box tournament they had at Otaku Fest this past weekend. It was 42 players with the top 8 that we see here today, and it's just more of the meta that we've been seeing. 2 Trafalgar Laws, 2 Usus Kids, 2 Kaidos, a Doffy, and a Zoro as well. So very, very kind of what we've been seeing. Disappointed, no Luffy, of course, but Zoro is pretty close to what Luffy is, very strong. And very interesting to see that Trafalgar Law has won 2 PPG big events in a row as well. And we'll see a little bit more interesting into that in a second. So yeah, let's just jump into the deck list, and we'll start off with David's first place Trafalgar Law. Starting off, we have David Melendez's first place Trafalgar Law. And real quick, I do want to show you guys Justin DeZazzo's first place list from the webcam case tournament from PPG the other week as well. Did you notice anything? It is the same deck. I am changing pages, but it is, yeah, the 100% the same deck. So not saying who had the idea first, because who knows, but it does mean that it is true that this is a proven twice first place Trafalgar Law list. So I know this is definitely a leader that lends to a lot of creative choices and a lot of your own particular, one-ofs and such for your deck building choices. But man, it does look like this one is a pretty dang consistent one. So I personally would have some changes of my own, but I also haven't won any tournaments with Trafalgar Law, so don't trust me, trust the results here. And I think this is a pretty good list for anyone trying to get into the leader, which again, this is a very tricky leader in a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways for you to make mistakes, and there's a lot of small tiny decisions that you have to make, but the fact that this has a lot of answers to a lot of different decks and such, I think makes it very, very strong. So specifically, all your searches, we have Namis, Bonnies, and the Momos. We also have just a bunch of like Supernovas and Wano Country and Straw Hats are probably the 3 best tags in the game. There's just so many cards with that. Some of them have 2, like this Luffy and Zoro are both Straw Hats and Supernovas, which is fantastic. Trafalgar Law being a Supernova as well. Like the best 3 cards are Supernovas, so you really want to value your Bonnie. And there's a lot of ways where you can use your Bonnie effect, tap it, then bounce it back to hand with your leader effect, or by playing a 5-drop Trafalgar Law, which means you are 100% saving it, and then next turn you can play it again and find another card as well, and then bounce it right back with leader effect to play a Zoro for cheaper, right? And just keep the momentum going. So obviously that's the end state for a deck like this, but it's sometimes very tricky to get there. And I don't know, it's a very good deck for people who want to tackle something difficult, and can be very rewarding when it does well, just as like David did well with it for this weekend as well. So congrats for their finish there. And moving along, we do have Richard Ramos's second place Usus Kid. And I'm going to do a lot of comparing to the PPG webcam case tournament that I also did a top 16 for. So comparing to the top placing list in that one just strictly did not run any event cards. They just maxed out on the plus 2K Dawn or 2K counter cards and kind of went with that. They also didn't run any of the 7-drop and mostly focused on the 8-drop Usus Kid. So I do think even if Usus is the best leader for green, or maybe even the best leader in the game, there is just so much room for diversity and your own personal choices. And that's just something, honestly, I still love about this card game, where we're in set 1. It's the smallest card pool that we're essentially ever going to see for the game. And still, people are making a lot of one-of decisions, making their own decisions, what cards they like, what they don't like, and they have the room to make those decisions, and they are able to win at the same time. So I think that's really cool and rewarding for this one. So the decisions that I've seen in this list specifically, Yamato at 2 of, this is not always needed, but it is a Wano Country and a plus 1K counter, so it's never a terrible card to find. True Trafalgar Law, X-Drake I've been seeing getting a little bit more popular as well. Being able to use its effect to KO something in rest is nice in a lot of ways, so I think that is a great. And it's a 6K on board, which is pretty good, and it's a Supernova, so it's findable by Bonnie, like all these other good things. Basil Hawkins, not everyone runs these. I think some people dislike it, but sometimes it just wins you the game on the spot. So I understand why he's polarizing, but he is very good, especially since you have a good amount of uncounterable cards too, which is why I also do kind of prefer the style of the deck without the event cards. But Paradise Waterfall can just get stupid amount of value by getting something out of the out of the range of attack by unsuspending it or setting it to active, which is good. Punk Gibson is pretty good in security, can sometimes just win you the game if you hit in life at the right time. 2 for this is just fine too. If you know your opponent's going wide and you're not going to be able to clear the board, using 2 to prevent another attack can be good there. And then Straw Sword I've been seeing getting a little bit more popularity. When the set first dropped, not a lot of people played this, but just being able to unilaterally rest something. It is also a supernova, so you're able to find it off the Bonnie too. It just sucks that like the trigger is play a supernovas from your hand. I really wish that it was just the same thing as the Punk Gibson, where you're just able to rest something. It makes sense for the how the card works too, and it's just a weird card there. Like the best things you can play off it are like I guess the Killer Bonnie or Beige, but even then, like it doesn't hit a lot for it. So it's just a weird trigger for it. I think that keeps it back, but I don't know. I digress. Kid's good. Richard, congrats on your finish there. No doubt we're going to be seeing a lot more of this Usus Kid deck, and we'll see what other creative decisions are made for them there. Next up is the 3rd place Kaido. This is from Jaime Jimenez, and this is also some pretty creative and different decisions made for this one as well. Specifically, only running 2 of the Star Deck King, which is pretty small for what it is. People usually max this card out and then they run like 2 or more. And just the fact there's more of the 7-drop King than the 6-drop King, I think is really interesting too. The idea is that you can play this on if you go first, you can go ramp to on turn 3. You play your Onigashima, you get a ramp, and then on turn 3 you're at 6 Dawn, so you're good, right? But if you're always planning on going second, which most I think Kaidos are starting to shift towards because you have better chances of finding your Onigashima, that also means that turn 2 you're at 4 Dawn and you ramp to 5 with Oni, and then you can get to 7 and then you can play the King. So if more players are trying to do that, that's better for it there. This one just like hits more stuff too. It doesn't hit a 4 cost, but I think most of the good cards right now are 2s and 3s that are early game targets too. So I think that makes sense a little bit. You do suffer against like a deck like Doffy, which is around but not super duper popular. But I think this is a better choice for stuff against like Trafalgar Law and stuff. But there's no like 4 costs, like even in the mirror match, right? The only things that people were playing are like 2s and 3s, and they kind of jump up to 5s right after that. So the original King wouldn't be hit by that anyways. Babanuki, I think, is getting a lot of popularity too. He's just a good, solid card. He's a counter if you need him, and a 5-drop that's a 7k is sometimes hard for some decks to remove as well. So I think that's cool there. Queen's a staple. Jack at 2, I personally still like Jack for just potential games where you don't find Onigashima because it still is a 1k counter, but I know that's not super popular anymore. One of the who's, if you're playing like so little of the 6-drop King, I would say like 2 or 3 who's could be fit in as well. There's also the inclusion of the 8-drop Kaido, which I'm not the biggest fan of. Like the idea of him is kind of neat, right? But he's not really neat unless like it's immediately followed up by like a 10 drop or like using the -7 effect, because like you don't like if you play it on turn 8, that just means guaranteed next turn you're going to be at 10 Dawn anyways, right? You do get the Dawn inactive, so that is impactful too, but I haven't really found a reason to run him over other cards personally, just because he's also doesn't have any counter cost with him, and I could just see him stuck in hand late game as well. But it obviously worked for Jaime, so I'm not going to say it doesn't work, but I've just yet to find the value that I really like for it. 9-drop Kaido 3, 10-drop Kaido 3 as well. A bit chunkier on these numbers, but again, if you're running less of the Kings, you do have some room for non-counter cards. And then 4 whole Blast Breaths, and also 4 of the Thunder Bagua, which is quite a lot. Most people run like 2 is like the average number I see there, but 4 is a lot. The trigger for this is fantastic. If you hit the first trigger on like the first card in your life, sometimes you feel like you win the game just off that, which is pretty crazy. That extra Dawn, like you'll be at like 7 Dawn, your opponent's like at 3 sometimes. Like it's just silly just how much Dawn you're able to ramp early game with this. Late game too, like being able to get this, you do get to ramp later. So if you are running like a more aggressive -7 style version of this deck, I can definitely see the Thunder Bagwas and the Kaido 8-drop making a little bit more sense for that. it could be definitely a thing where, like, if you had 9 Dawn, you can play the 8 cost Kaido, do the -7, you get 2 Dawn active, 1 from the extra one, and you get 1 back from Kaido. You play Thunder Bagua as well for a counter. You're up to 3. At the start of next turn, you're at 5, and you 6, and then 7 again at the end with the Kaido, assuming you have Oni out. So I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point. Congrats for Jaime on this, and no doubt we'll see Kaido as well in the next couple of weeks. Next up, we have Bobby Flagler's 5th place Doffy, which Doffy is like, I'd say he's like tier 1.5. I think the other 3 decks that we saw are probably the best 3 leaders in the game right now, meaning Trafalgar Law, Kid, Kaido. Zoro's probably up there too, adding to a top 4. Doffy is like good, but usually just like a little bit less consistent than those 4. But this is a really interesting list from Bobby as well. The first kind of engine or like thing I saw from this was the inclusion of the Caesar Clown as well. So essentially this just says on KO, play 1 smiley card from your deck, then shuffle your deck, which you have to specifically have this card from your deck as well, which is unfortunate. You can't play it from your hand. I don't think it'd be broken if it was from deck in hand, but it doesn't do that. Then you also have your Smiley here. It's just a 3 cost, and Dawn times 1. This character gets plus 1k power for each card in your hand. So you do get a lot of kind of hand advantage from this deck naturally if you're continuing to play stuff from the top of your deck. My only issue with adding this is that this deck really wants to get a lot of cards in like stacked on top of your deck. And so if this is KO'd, you have to play it a card and then you shuffle it, right? And even if you know there's no smileys in there, you have to try to play one, right? So the fact that you have to shuffle your deck after this Caesar Clown dies means that you ruin all of the top 5 consistency and knowledge that was on the top of your deck, and that can really mess you up if played at the wrong time. So that's my one issue with that deck. If that doesn't come up, cool, we're good, we're fine. And the fact that you have to actually play this for 4 because it isn't a 7 Warlords is a little stinky, but just the fact that this can recur cost from this is great, especially in such a cost heavy deck like this, or like a value based heavy deck like this as well. And also, it's just really weird that there's no Desert Spada as well, just to potentially help you with this. But you do have Peronas, you have Don Quixote, Doflamingos to help you with those top 7s. You just don't always see them. But that I digress from there. Crocodile, I like this as like a 1 or 2 of. There's no Doffy in this either, which is interesting. There are 3 Draco Mihawks, which are strong too. And I do like Crocodile as like a end game, like a big boss boy, especially because he does have a counter, so you're never like in a bad spot with him. But I don't know. It's a little interesting there. I do like Virgo. I think this is a strong card. Now that I've been playing a little bit more blue than usual lately, trying to crack the code myself, and getting this out on turn 5 with a plus 1k counter and like 7k, DP is just really, really strong in this game. So it's, even though it doesn't have any synergy with the deck, I think running a couple of these, you'll find a lot of consistency and a lot of times where your opponent really wants to try to get rid of this, and if they're spending resources trying to get rid of this Virgo, you're in a really good spot too. So I like the ad for it. I think it's good. The rest I think are pretty standard. A good amount of 7 Warlord cards from Boa Hancock Gecko, Draco Mihawk, then also the Don Quixote Doflamingo and the Marshall D Teach as well. So that is there. Congrats to Bobby. And to finish it off, we do have this Zoro list here. So a very aggressive build format, but I also do see a couple. I don't know. I've been trying to play Zoro. I know I've been dunking on Zoro a lot in the last couple of weeks, especially since I think Luffy is a little bit better right now, but I have been play testing against it a little bit more too, and I do have to respect just how much power this has and how much aggression this can, output at the same time. So especially like if Luffy versus Zoro, if they get their Nico Robin established first, if they are able to go first and establish Nico Robin, you also just lose as the Luffy, which feels really bad. So I do like the add of like more of like these mid-range tools. Not a lot. Obviously, you're very aggressive, but we do have like 4 of the Nico Robins. We have 2 Trafalgar Laws, which is Otamas, which both of these add up really nicely. And then the rest are just solid cards. A lot of 2K counters, and there's also the Monkey D Luffy as well. Dawn times 2, this card can't be KO'd. with strikes, and then also you can get 2 rested Dawn to him, so he can become a 5k and 6k with a leader effect all by himself, which is good. You do need like a bunch of like Dawn recursion at times with this, so that does help you there. Brook I do like in this deck versus Luffy, because there are just turns where you want to just play this guy to get another guy on board to swing next turn, or just, you know, have your opponent try to interact with it, and then you also give 2 Dawn to your stuff, so that does help pump up some cards. Like if you just have like a Nami out, you can use Brook effect and then just put 1 under Zoro, and then Nami's a 5k, Zoro's a 5k or 6k, and then Brook is good to be a 4k and then 5k with 1 more Dawn investment next turn. So I think that's all strong. One of Shanks, I don't usually see like Shanks in Zoro decks, but I do think that Shanks is such a good card that if you find room for 1 or 2, then you're probably going to be okay with it. Sanji's strong too, just another rush card. I think 10 plus 1, 11 rush cards are probably good enough. There's not a lot of counter in this deck at times because there are a bunch of non-counter ones with that. The VV is cool too, just because if you go second, just dropping it down and then it's a 5k swing immediately with Zoro effect the next turn, I think is good too. So no counters in this deck, I think makes sense. I have been shown by, thank you to Nico, how much Red Hawk can just win you the game at times too. So you do have to be careful about that. And it's a cool inclusion with the deck, but at the same time, if you're trying to be something that's really, really aggressive, it's kind of hard to find room for that at times too. So anyways, but yeah, just having like another security bomb, I think is pretty scary too. So I don't know, I'm going to have to do some more personal testing on that as well. But that is the end of this top 8 breakdown. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. We have a bunch of more One Piece tournaments coming up in the next couple of weeks, especially with Treasure Cups starting out next month, and really excited to see at like these larger, 500 plus people tournaments how this kind of translates to results as well. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all next time.
Damn it. Damn it.